Ethan stood on the bustling street corner of Chicago, the noise of the city swirling around him like a chaotic symphony. Cars honked, people chatted, and the aroma of street food wafted through the air. But for Ethan, none of it mattered. He had his violin cradled beneath his chin, and as his fingers danced over the strings, he felt transported to another world. A world where he was not just a 12-year-old boy struggling with the weight of expectations and the sting of bullying, but a musician sharing his soul with anyone willing to listen. The sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a golden hue over the pavement. Ethan took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. He drew the bow across the strings, producing a haunting melody that caught the attention of passers-by. A small crowd began to gather, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of the setting sun. Some swayed gently to the rhythm, while others stood still, momentarily captivated by the music that flowed from his heart. Yet, despite the growing audience, Ethan felt a twinge of invisibility. He was there, yet somehow apart, as if encased in glass. The music was his sanctuary, but it also reminded him of the loneliness that often accompanied his talent. He could play the violin better than most kids his age, but the accolades never seemed to reach him in the way he hoped. He was the quiet kid, the one who blended into the background, even when he was pouring his heart out in notes and harmonies. "Wow, he's really good," a girl whispered to her friend, her eyes wide with admiration. "Yeah, but who cares? It's just a violin," her friend replied dismissively, rolling her eyes as they walked past, their laughter echoing in Ethan's ears. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus back on the music. He had learned to ignore the whispers, the giggles, and the occasional snickers. But just as he lost himself in the melody, a group of older boys approached, their swagger evident in their careless movements. Ethan recognized them from school. Jake and his crew, the self-proclaimed kings of the playground. They strutted like they owned the street, their laughter sharp and mocking. "Hey, look at the little sissy playing his girly music," Jake yelled, the laughter of his friends bubbling up behind him. "What's next? A ballet recital?" Ethan's heart sank, the confidence he had built momentarily crumbling under the weight of their taunts. He felt the familiar heat rise to his cheeks, but he fought back the urge to stop playing. Instead, he tightened his grip on the bow and continued, pouring everything he had into the music. He focused on the notes, the vibrations, and the connection he felt with the instrument. "Just ignore them," he whispered to himself, though his mind was racing, the din of their ridicule mixing with the melody. "Just play, Simon, man, we're just having some fun." One of Jake's friends sneered, elbowing him playfully as they walked past Ethan, clearly enjoying their moment of superiority. Ethan's fingers trembled slightly, but he pressed on, letting the music drown out the negativity. He played through the pain, through the laughter that felt like daggers aimed at his heart. The notes soared higher, intertwining with his emotions, creating a tapestry of sound that encapsulated both his strength and vulnerability. As the last note lingered in the air, he opened his eyes to see that some in the crowd had remained, nodding appreciatively. A few even clapped softly, their applause a balm to his wounded spirit. But before he could bask in that fleeting moment of triumph, he caught sight of the boys again. They were snickering, their backs to him, but he knew that their laughter would echo in his mind long after they left. "Man, that kid really thinks he's something," Jake said, his voice dripping with derision. Ignoring them completely, Ethan took a deep breath, preparing to start a new piece. Just as he settled into a more upbeat rhythm, a warm presence caught his attention. An elderly woman stood nearby, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She had a kind smile that contrasted starkly with the harshness of the streets, and her eyes sparkled with an understanding that made Ethan pause. "Beautiful, just beautiful," she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the noise around them. Ethan blinked, surprised by her enthusiasm. "Thank you," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's your name, dear?" she asked, stepping closer, her gaze fixed on him with genuine interest. "I'm Ethan," he said, still somewhat bewildered by her presence. "Ethan? What a lovely name for a lovely boy with a gift for music." She leaned in a little closer, as if sharing a secret. "I used to play the violin too, you know. Many years ago." Her admission ignited a spark of curiosity within Ethan. "Really? You played?" "Of course," she chuckled, her laughter warm and inviting. "I was quite the violinist in my youth. Life took me in different directions, but music has always been a part of me." Ethan felt a connection forming between them, an invisible thread woven from their shared love of music. I love playing. It's the only thing that makes me feel." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Safe, I guess." The woman nodded knowingly. "Music can be a very powerful refuge, can't it? It allows us to express what we sometimes cannot say. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Keep playing, Ethan. Your music matters." For a brief moment, the weight of the world lifted from Ethan's shoulders. He felt seen, truly seen, by someone who understood the intricacies of his heart. He managed to smile, the warmth of her words rekindling a flicker of hope within him. "Thank you, miss." He trailed off, realizing he hadn't caught her name. "Clara," she replied, extending her hand. "Miss Clara, at your service." He took her hand, feeling the softness of her skin and the strength of her grip. "It's nice to meet you, Miss Clara. Likewise, Ethan. Now, can you play something else for me?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the group of boys who had moved on, their laughter fading into the distance. The fear of judgment lingered, but Clara's presence felt like a shield, protecting him from the harshness of the world outside their small bubble. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ethan lifted his violin once more, the bow gliding across the strings as he lost himself in the music. The sweet notes filled the air, and he found himself playing not just for the crowd, but for Clara as well. As the final note rang out, he looked up to find her beaming at him, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Ah, that was magnificent," she exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "You have a gift, Ethan. Don't ever let anyone dim your light." For the first time that day, Ethan felt like he could breathe. In the midst of the noise, the mockery, and the chaos of adolescence, he had found a moment of clarity. With Clara's encouragement, he began to envision a future that was not only about survival, but about thriving through the music he loved. "Thank you, Miss Clara," he said, his voice steady. "I'll keep playing." And as he looked into her warm, encouraging eyes, he realized that perhaps he was not so invisible after all. Ethan stood on the busy corner of his neighborhood, the cool wind rustling through the leaves of the nearby trees, as he prepared to play his violin once again. The familiar sounds of the city enveloped him: honking cars, the chatter of pedestrians, and the occasional barking of a dog. He took a deep breath, positioning the instrument under his chin, feeling its smooth wood against his skin. This was his sanctuary, a momentary escape from the chaos that often swirled around him. As he began to play, his fingers danced across the strings, producing a melody that shimmered like sunlight on water. The notes flowed from him effortlessly, wrapping around the passers-by. He noticed a few familiar faces among the crowd, people who had stopped before to listen. Their expressions varied. Some seemed lost in thought, while others smiled, appreciating the music that filled the air. In that moment, Ethan felt a flicker of hope and connection, a brief reminder that he wasn't entirely alone in the world. However, as the music enveloped him, a familiar sensation began to creep back in. He could hear the mocking laughter of the older boys from the other day echoing in his mind. "You're playing like a girl," one had shouted. He shook his head, trying to dispel the negativity that threatened to overshadow his performance. Music was supposed to be his refuge, not a reminder of the pain of rejection. Just then Miss Clara approached, her warm smile cutting through the noise of the street. She had become a beacon of light for Ethan, someone who saw him for who he truly was beneath the layers of doubt and fear. As she drew closer, he could see the twinkle in her eyes, a mixture of pride and fondness. "Ethan, "That was beautiful," she exclaimed, her voice bright and encouraging. "You play with such passion. It reminds me of my late husband, Robert. He had a way of making the violin sing, just like you." Intrigued, Ethan lowered his violin and looked up at her. "Did he really? What was he like?" Miss Clara chuckled softly, a hint of nostalgia in her tone. "Oh, he was a dreamer, you know. He believed in the power of music to connect people. We often played duets together in our small living room, the sound enveloping us like a warm blanket. It was our way of sharing our souls." Ethan could see the warmth in her eyes, the way her memories brought her to life. Ethan could see the warmth in her eyes, the way her memories brought her to life. "What kind of music did you play?" "Everything, really, from classical to jazz. We loved exploring different genres, but the most special pieces were the ones he wrote himself. They came from a place deep within him, and when I played them, it felt like we were speaking a language only we understood," she explained, her voice trailing off as if she were lost in those cherished moments. Ethan felt a pang of longing. "I wish I could write music like that. I want to be a professional musician someday," but his voice faltered, the weight of his struggles heavy on his heart. "What's holding you back, dear?" Miss Clara asked gently, her eyes searching his for the truth. Ethan sighed, the truth spilling out as if he had been waiting for someone to ask. "At school, it's hard. The other kids, they don't understand. They think playing the violin is stupid. And then there are the bullies. They make me feel like I don't belong anywhere." Miss Clara's expression softened, her heart aching for the boy before her. "Ethan, I want you to remember something important. Music is a part of who you are. No one can take that away from you, no matter what they say. It's your voice, your identity. Embrace it." He nodded, her words resonating deep within him. "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" "Every great musician has faced doubt, my dear. It's part of the journey. What matters is that you keep playing, keep practicing, and believe in yourself. You have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world," Miss Clara encouraged, her voice unwavering. Ethan felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. "I'll try. I really want to. I just need to find a way to ignore the negativity. Then let music be your shield," she replied, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "Let it protect you from the harshness of the world. And remember, I'm always here to listen if you need someone to talk to." The sincerity in her words made Ethan feel a sense of comfort he hadn't known in a long time. "Thank you, Miss Clara Dada. You always know what to say." They shared a moment of silence, the bustling city around them fading into the background as they connected through their shared love of music. Later that week, as Ethan sat in his room, he couldn't shake the feeling of inspiration Miss Clara had ignited within him. He picked up his violin, the wood cool against his chin as he prepared to practice. He focused on the pieces he had been working on, but his mind kept drifting back to Clara's stories about Robert. What kind of music had he composed? Was it as beautiful as the way Clara described? Ethan wondered if he could ever create something that resonated so deeply with someone else. As he practiced, he felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a desire to push beyond his limits. He played with newfound intensity, losing track of time as the notes filled the room. The melody he created was raw and unfiltered, a reflection of his hopes and fears. The days turned into weeks, and with each encounter, Ethan found himself opening up more to Miss Clara. They would sit on the street corner, her eyes sparkling as she listened to him play, her presence a comforting reminder that he was not alone. One afternoon, after finishing a particularly challenging piece, he took a deep breath and turned to her. "Miss Clara, I want to share something with you. It's my dream to become a professional musician, but I'm scared. What if I never make it?" She looked at him, her expression serious yet reassuring. "Ethan, dreams are meant to be chased, The fear you feel is normal, but you mustn't let it paralyze you. Each step you take toward your goal is a victory, even if it feels small. I've been practicing a lot, but sometimes I feel like I'm not improving, he admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. Remember, progress isn't always linear. Some days will be better than others. What matters is your dedication and love for the music. Keep pushing yourself, and you'll surprise yourself with what you can achieve, she said, her voice full of conviction. Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. He felt a sense of purpose swelling within him, the need to pursue his passion, despite the challenges he faced. I'll keep trying, I promise. As their conversations deepened, Clara decided it was time to share something special with Ethan. One afternoon, she reached into her bag and pulled out a weathered piece of music paper. Its edges were frayed, and the notes were handwritten in a delicate script. This was Robert's, she said, handing it to him with a hint of reverence. He composed it during a time when he was struggling with his own doubts. I believe it holds the key to unlocking your true potential. Ethan's heart raced as he carefully took the sheet music. The title, Whispers of the Heart, was scrawled across the top. Can I really play this? He asked, feeling both honored and intimidated. Of course. I want you to make it your own. When you play it, remember the love and passion behind each note. Let it speak to you, Clara encouraged, her eyes shining with belief. As he studied the music, a wave of excitement washed over him. This was more than just a piece of paper. It was a connection to Clara's past and a chance to dive deeper into his own musical journey. Thank you, Miss Clara. I won't let you down. You could never let me down, Ethan. Just promise me you'll always play from your heart, she replied, her voice filled with warmth. He nodded, determination settling in his chest. This was the beginning of something beautiful, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. With Clara's wisdom and the music of Robert guiding him, he knew he was on the right path. Ethan's fingers danced over the strings of his violin, plucking out notes with newfound precision and joy. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling street corner where he often played. The music flowed through him, a powerful current that surged with every stroke of his bow. Inspired by Miss Clara's stories and the gift of the old sheet music, he had dedicated himself to practice, finding a rhythm not just in his music but in his life. Each note he played seemed to resonate with the encouragement Clara had given him, lifting him higher than he had ever felt before. As he finished a particularly challenging piece, Ethan noticed a small group of kids gathering nearby, their eyes wide with curiosity rather than disdain. He could hardly believe it. They were whispering among themselves, pointing at him as if he were a celebrity rather than the shy boy they had known before. His heart raced with excitement, and he felt a swell of pride. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was starting to be seen. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through his reverie. Hey, Ethan, that was amazing. It was Lily, a girl from his school who had often been friendly but never particularly engaged in his music. What was that piece? It sounded so magical. Ethan blinked, momentarily taken aback by her enthusiasm. It's a piece my friend Clara gave me, he replied, a shy smile creeping onto his face. It's called Meditation by Massenet. Lily's eyes lit up. I've heard of that. My mom loves that piece. She plays it all the time. Encouraged, Ethan straightened his back. I'm practicing a lot lately. I really want to get into the city music program. Wow, that's awesome. I think you totally can. Just keep doing what you're doing, she said, her voice brimming with sincerity. The other kids nodded in agreement, and a ripple of applause erupted from the small crowd that had gathered. Ethan felt his cheeks flush with warmth. He had never experienced such support before. As the crowd began to disperse, Ethan packed up his violin, a bright smile plastered across his face. He was riding a high he had never felt before, buoyed by the thrill of acceptance and recognition. He couldn't wait to share his day with Miss Clara. Later that evening, he made his way to her house, the old sheet music tucked safely under his arm. He knocked on her door, his heart racing with anticipation. Clara opened the door, her familiar warm smile immediately putting him at ease. "Ethan, come in, come in." She beckoned, ushering him into her cozy living room, filled with framed photographs of musicians and shelves, lined with records. "I had the most amazing day," he exclaimed, his excitement bubbling over. "I played a new piece, and a bunch of kids actually liked it. They even applauded." Clara's eyes twinkled with delight. "Oh, my dear boy, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Tell me all about it." She settled into her armchair, her silver hair catching the light as she leaned forward, eager to hear. As Ethan recounted the day's events, Clara listened intently, nodding and smiling at all the right moments. When he finished, she clapped her hands together. "You see, Ethan, music has a way of connecting us, of bridging gaps we never thought possible. It's a powerful tool for self-expression." "I know. I feel like I'm finally starting to find my voice," he replied, his eyes shining with determination. "I want to get into the city music program, but I still have to audition. I'm nervous about it." "Ah, but nerves can be a good thing," Clara said thoughtfully. "They remind you that what you're doing matters. Just remember, when you play, you're sharing a piece of your soul with the world. Let that guide you." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words like a sponge. He felt a surge of confidence that he hadn't known before. "I will, Clara. I promise." The following week at school, however, the shadows of doubt crept back in. Ethan walked through the halls, clutching his books tightly to his chest when he spotted Jake, the school's most notorious bully, leaning against the lockers with a group of his friends. Ethan's heart sank. Jake had a way of ruining everything. "Look who it is," Jake sneered, spotting Ethan. "The little violinist thinks he's going to be a big shot. What a joke." Laughter erupted from his friends, and Ethan felt his stomach twist uncomfortably. He tried to keep his head down and walk past, but Jake blocked his path. "What's the matter, Ethan? You scared to show us what you've got?" Jake taunted, stepping closer. "You think you can just waltz into that fancy music program? You don't belong there." Ethan's heart raced, not just with fear but with a simmering anger he hadn't felt before. He wanted to shout back, to tell Jake that he was more than just a target for bullying, but the words caught in his throat. He glanced around at the other students, who were watching the scene unfold, and he felt a wave of humiliation wash over him. "Just leave me alone, Jake," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why? So you can keep playing your little tunes." "Pathetic," Jake shot back, bumping into Ethan as he pushed past him. The humiliation stung, and Ethan felt his confidence begin to crumble. He hurried away, the laughter of Jake and his friends ringing in his ear. Later that day, he found himself at Clara's, needing to unload the weight of his frustration. He paced the small living room while she sat in her chair, observing him with a knowing expression. "What's bothering you, Ethan?" Clara asked gently, her voice steady and calm. "It's Jake," Ethan blurted out, stopping in front of her. "He's been making fun of me, saying I don't belong in the music program. It's like every time I try to be proud of myself, he just knocks me back down." Clara frowned, her brow furrowing as she processed his words. "Oh, my dear boy, bullies often lash out because they feel threatened or insecure themselves. It has nothing to do with your worth or your talent, but it still hurts," Ethan exclaimed, his frustration boiling over. "I want to be strong, but I feel so small when he does that." Clara leaned forward, her eyes piercing through his doubts. "True strength comes not from how others see you, but from how you see yourself. You must learn to stand tall in your own truth. You have a gift, Ethan. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Ethan felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. "But how do I do that? What if he keeps bothering me?" "Then you must confront him, not with anger but with confidence. Show him that you are not afraid to stand for yourself. Music is about courage and vulnerability. It's a reflection of who you are. When you channel that into your audition, you will find the strength you need. Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling into his heart. You really believe I can do this? I know you can, Clara said, her smile warm and reassuring. You have the heart of a musician. Remember, every great artist has faced challenges. It's how you respond to them that will define your journey. With Clara's encouragement echoing in his mind, Ethan felt a newfound sense of determination. He was ready to face Jake, to embrace his music and the path he wanted to carve for himself. It wouldn't be easy, but with Clara by his side, he felt as though he could take on the world. As he prepared for the audition, the notes flowed more freely than ever before. Each practice session transformed into a celebration of his spirit and resilience. Clara's voice became a guiding light, pushing him to dig deeper and find strength in his music. He was no longer just playing, he was expressing himself, a reflection of his identity and dreams. The days rolled by, and with each passing moment, Ethan felt himself growing stronger. He was on the precipice of something great, and no bully could take that away from him. He was ready to embrace his passion and the challenges ahead, fueled by the belief that he was worthy of every note he played. Ethan stood in front of the large, imposing building that housed the auditorium for the prestigious music program audition. His heart raced in his chest, pounding like a drum, and he could feel the sweat trickling down the back of his neck. The air was charged with excitement and anxiety, filled with the chatter of other hopeful musicians warming up their instruments. He gripped his violin case tightly, recalling Miss Clara's words echoing in his mind like a soothing melody. Remember, Ethan, it's not just about the notes you play, it's about the story you tell through your music. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the heavy doors and entered the auditorium. The stage loomed ahead, bright lights illuminating the polished wooden floor. A panel of judges sat before him, their expressions serious as they listened to the sounds of various instruments filling the air. Ethan felt small in the vast space, the weight of expectation pressing down on him. He closed his eyes for a moment, envisioning Clara's smile, the warmth of her encouragement enveloping him like a comforting blanket. Next up, Ethan Green, a voice called out, breaking his concentration. He stepped forward, his legs feeling like jelly. As he approached the center of the stage, the audience dimmed, and all he could see were the judges, their faces a mix of scrutiny and curiosity. Ethan positioned his violin under his chin, his fingers trembling slightly as he adjusted the bow. The world around him faded away, and he focused on the music, letting it flow through him like a powerful current. As he began to play, haunting notes filled the auditorium, weaving a tapestry of emotion that resonated with every listener. Each stroke of the bow was a release, a culmination of all his struggles, fears, and dreams. He poured his heart into the performance, allowing the music to tell the story he had always wanted to express. When he finished, the silence that followed felt heavy. The judges exchanged glances, and Ethan's heart sank, a pit of doubt forming in his stomach. Had he played well enough? Would they see the passion and dedication he had invested? Thank you, Ethan, one of the judges finally said, breaking the silence. That was quite moving. Ethan nodded, trying to read their expressions, but they remained inscrutable. He stepped off the stage, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. As he walked through the hallway, he overheard snippets of conversations, his name mentioned in hushed tones. Did you hear him play? He has potential. Very passionate. But I'm not sure if he's ready for this level. Ethan's heart sank further. What did they mean by ready? He had practiced relentlessly, pouring every ounce of his being into the music. He leaned against a wall, trying to steady his breathing. Doubts began to creep in, the voices of his bullies echoing in his mind. He'll never be good enough. Just then, he noticed a familiar figure entering the hallway. It was Clara, her presence instantly calming him. She looked radiant, dressed in a light blue cardigan that matched her eyes. Ethan, she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. I was waiting for you outside. How did it go? Ethan forced a smile, though his heart was still heavy. "I don't know yet. I played. I think I did okay, but I overheard some things that make me doubt." Clara approached him, her expression turning serious. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Doubt is a natural part of any artist's journey. Remember, my dear, it's not just about what they think. It's about what you feel when you play." He nodded, appreciating her wisdom, but the uncertainty lingered. "What if it's not enough? What if I'm not enough?" "Ethan," Clara said gently, "you are enough. You have a gift, and no one can take that away from you. You must believe in yourself as much as I believe in you." Her words were like a balm to his soul. Yet the anxious feeling wouldn't budge. "What if they don't want me? What if I don't get in? Then we will take it one step at a time," Clara replied, her tone unwavering. "You learn, you grow, and you keep playing. This is just one chapter in your story." Before Ethan could respond, a group of judges stepped out of the audition room, their expressions solemn. His heart raced as he strained to hear their conversation. "Some impressive talent today, but I'm not sure he's ready for the intensity of this program," one of them said. "Agreed, but there's something special about him. He just needs to find his voice," another chimed in. Ethan winced, feeling as if they were discussing him like a specimen under a microscope. The words, "not ready," echoed painfully in his mind, and he turned away, trying to block out their voices. "Ethan." Clara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you okay?" He forced a smile, though it felt strained. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just waiting. Let's step outside for a moment. The fresh air will do us both good," Clara suggested, guiding him away from the crowd. They found a small garden courtyard behind the building, the gentle rustle of leaves providing a serene backdrop. Clara took a deep breath, her face softening as she looked up at the sky. "You know, there was a time when I felt lost in my own music career. I faced many rejections, but every setback taught me something valuable." Ethan listened intently, sensing the depth of her experiences. "What did you learn?" "That music is more than just a path to success. It's about connection. Connecting with yourself, with others, and with the world. That's what makes it powerful." Just then, Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting their moment. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, stepping a few feet away to answer the call. Ethan watched her, sensing a change in the atmosphere. The vibrant energy of their conversation felt distant, as if a shadow had crept in. He couldn't quite hear what she was saying, but he could tell from her tone that it wasn't good news. Clara's brows furrowed and her voice trembled slightly. "Thank you for letting me know," she said softly, her gaze drifting to the ground. "I'll be there as soon as I can." When she hung up, Clara turned back to Ethan, her smile faltering. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I just received some news that I need to attend to. I hope you understand. Is everything okay?" Ethan asked, suddenly concerned. Clara hesitated, her eyes clouded with something unspoken. "It's a family matter. Nothing you need to worry about." Ethan felt a pang of worry in his chest. Clara had always been his rock, a source of unwavering support. The thought of her being troubled weighed heavily on him. "Can I come with you? I want to help." She shook her head gently, her expression softening. "No, dear. This is something I need to handle on my own. But promise me you'll keep playing, keep believing in yourself. No matter what happens, you have a bright future ahead." Ethan nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "Will you be okay?" "I will," she assured him. "Just a little bump in the road. I'll see you soon, all right?" With that, Clara turned and walked away, her figure slowly disappearing from view. Ethan stood alone in the garden, the weight of the day pressing down on him. He felt a mix of emotions swirling inside: fear, doubt, and a lingering hope. He leaned against a tree, closing his eyes as he tried to process everything. The audition, Clara's words, the conversation he had overheard. It was all too much. A part of him wanted to retreat, to hide away from the world and its judgments. But another part, the part that had learned from Clara, urged him to face whatever came next with courage. With a deep breath, Ethan took out his violin, the familiar weight bringing him a sense of comfort. He began to play softly, letting the notes flow like a river, carrying away his worries. As he played, he felt the music wrap around him, a protective cocoon that reminded him of who he was and what he loved. In that moment, he resolved to keep believing, to keep playing, no matter the outcome of the audition. He would honor Clara's wishes, for she had become a pivotal part of his journey. The challenges ahead felt daunting, but with each note he played, he also felt a growing determination. The world might be uncertain, but his music was his anchor, a reminder that he could create beauty even in the face of adversity. And as he played, he knew that whatever lay ahead, he would face it with his heart open, ready to embrace the next chapter of his life. Ethan stood motionless in his room, the vibrant sounds of the bustling Chicago neighborhood filtering through the open window. But all he could hear was the rapid thumping of his heart. He had just received the news that he had been accepted into the prestigious music program. A wave of elation washed over him, but it was quickly overshadowed by a heavy feeling in the pit of his stomach. Clara was in the hospital. He had never seen Clara sick before, and the thought of her frail frame lying on a hospital bed sent a jolt of anxiety through him. The warmth of her smile, the sparkle in her eyes when she spoke about music, it was all he could think of. He grabbed his violin, cradling it like a lifeline, and made his way to the hospital. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the world rested on his young shoulders. The hospital lobby was sterile and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth Clara radiated. Ethan approached the reception desk, his palms clammy, and asked for Clara's room number. The nurse looked up from her computer, her expression sympathetic. "Room 306. She's expecting you," she said softly. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. The elevator ride felt interminable, and when the doors opened, he stepped onto a long corridor lined with stark white walls and the faint smell of antiseptic. He hesitated, taking a deep breath before moving toward her room. As he approached, he could hear the soft hum of a machine and the faint murmur of voices. Pushing the door open, he found Clara lying in a bed, her complexion pale and her hair uncharacteristically disheveled. The room was filled with flowers and cards from well-wishers, but it felt empty without her vibrant presence. "Ethan!" she exclaimed, her voice a fragile whisper, yet it held the same warmth he had come to cherish. "Clara," he said, rushing to her side. He placed his violin on a chair, then took her hand in his, feeling the frailty of her fingers. "I'm so glad to see you. I got into the music program." His voice wavered with excitement, but her gaze shifted, a shadow crossing her features. "I'm proud of you, Ethan. You deserve it," she said, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "But I need to tell you something important." Her voice faltered, and Ethan's heart sank. He had never seen her like this before. So vulnerable. "What is it?" he asked, squeezing her hand. "You can tell me anything." Clara took a deep breath, her eyes searching his face as if weighing how to share her truth. "I've been battling a terminal illness for some time now," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to worry, so I kept it from you. But I'm afraid it's gotten worse." Ethan's world tilted on its axis. The words, "terminal illness," echoed in his mind like a haunting melody. He felt a tightness in his throat. "I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked, and he fought back tears. "I didn't want to take away your joy, Ethan. Music is your passion. It's what brings you alive," Clara replied, her voice trembling. "It's what connects us, even in the hardest of times. You need to keep playing, no matter what." "But what if—" he started, but Clara interrupted him. "No what-ifs. Listen to me, Ethan. Music has the power to transcend pain and loss. It's a gift you have and you must use it. Promise me you'll keep pursuing your dreams." She looked at him with an intensity that made him nod, albeit reluctantly. "I promise," he whispered, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. Clara smiled, the warmth slowly returning to her eyes. "Good. It's important to remember that family and love are intertwined with music. You'll find strength in both. Your dreams are not just yours. They belong to all of us." "Family?" Ethan echoed, confusion flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" Clara hesitated, as if debating whether to reveal more. "There are secrets in our family, deep-rooted ones tied to the music we cherish. One day you'll understand. But for now, promise me you'll play for me. Play something beautiful." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the lump in his throat. "Here, now?" he asked, glancing around the small room. "Yes, right here, right now," Clara insisted, her voice firm yet gentle. "I want to hear you play." With a deep breath, Ethan stood, retrieving his violin from the chair. The familiar weight of it felt comforting in his hands, a reminder of all the moments he had shared with Clara. He positioned the instrument under his chin and closed his eyes, letting the music flow through him. He played a simple melody at first, one Clara had taught him. But soon his heart took over, and he poured all his emotions into the notes. The sound of the violin filled the room, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. Ethan played with passion, each note resonating with love, fear, and hope. Clara listened intently, her eyes closed, a serene smile gracing her lips. As he played, the room transformed. The sterile walls faded away, and for a moment, it was just them and the music, a world of their own. When he finished, Clara opened her eyes, glistening with tears. "That was beautiful, Ethan. You have a gift that can touch souls." She reached out, her hand brushing against his cheek. "Never forget that." "I won't," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. He sat beside her, the silence that followed heavy with unsaid words, each of them contemplating the fragility of life. "Ethan," she said softly, breaking the silence, "I need you to know that you're loved. No matter what happens, carry that love with you. Let it guide your music and your heart. I love you too." "Clara," he said, tears spilling from his eyes now. "You've always been there for me. I don't know what I'll do without you." "You'll be okay, my dear," she reassured him, her voice soothing. "You're stronger than you realize. Trust in yourself, in your music, and in the love that surrounds you." As they sat there, the weight of the world pressing down, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was imparting something greater, something tied to his family, his identity, and the music that flowed through his veins. He sensed there was more to Clara's story, a hidden truth waiting to be unveiled. But for now, all that mattered was her presence, the bond they shared through music, and the promise he made to keep playing, no matter what challenges lay ahead. "Can I come back tomorrow?" he asked, his heart aching at the thought of leaving her side. "Of course, Ethan," she replied, a gentle smile breaking through her frailty. "I'll be waiting for you." As he stood to leave, he took one last look at her, holding tightly to the memory of their shared music, their laughter, and the love that transcended the walls of the hospital. He stepped out into the hallway, the sterile air contrasting with the warmth of their connection. Ethan knew he would return, and with each visit, he would carry her spirit with him, intertwining it with his dreams and the music that would continue to resonate in his heart. Ethan sat on the edge of Clara's worn-out armchair, the fabric cool against his skin. The apartment felt emptier without her presence, the sunlight spilling through the window illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. He had spent the last few days in a fog of disbelief, struggling to process the weight of her absence. The music that once filled the corners of his life now felt muted, a distant echo of what it had been. But as he rummaged through the small box of her belongings, he felt a flicker of something, a sense of purpose, or perhaps a longing for connection. His fingers grazed over an envelope that bore his name in Clara's elegant cursive. It was a letter, weathered and slightly crumpled, as if it had been waiting for him to find it. With a trembling breath, he opened it, each crease unfolding like a new chapter in his life. The scent of her favorite lavender soap lingered on the paper, bringing a rush of memories back to him. "Dear Ethan," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means I am no longer there to guide you. My heart aches knowing you may feel alone, but please know that you are never truly alone. You have a family that loves you, even if they are miles away." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had always felt a void when it came to family, an unspoken distance that hovered like a shadow over his heart. He continued reading, the words becoming more profound with each line. "I must confess something I should have shared long ago. I am not just Miss Clara, the woman who encouraged you to play your violin. I am your grandmother, the very same woman who had to leave due to a feud that tore our family apart. I regret every moment spent apart from you and your mother. The music we shared was not just an escape, it was a bridge that connected our souls, one that I had hoped could one day connect our families." Ethan gasped, the letter slipping from his fingers and falling onto the floor. His heart raced as the realization crashed over him like a wave. His grandmother, the woman he had only known through fleeting conversations about music and dreams, was tied to him by blood and history. A family feud? It sounded like something out of a storybook, yet there it was, laid bare in front of him. He picked up the letter again, desperate to absorb every word. "I want you to know that the music you play is a part of our legacy. It is not just a talent. It is a gift that connects you to our family's past. I hope you will embrace this knowledge and continue to play with the passion you have always shown. You are stronger than you think, Ethan, and the world deserves to hear your music." Tears blurred Ethan's vision as he read the final lines. "Find your mother. It's time for you to know the truth about our family. Do not let the shadows of the past hold you back. You are the light we have been waiting for." He sat back, the weight of the letter heavy in his hands. Clara had been more than a mentor. She had been a link to a history he never knew existed. A grandmother he had never met, a family torn apart by circumstances he couldn't begin to understand. The idea of seeking out his mother filled him with both dread and determination. What had happened? Why had Clara, his grandmother, been forced away? Ethan glanced around the room, the silence screaming at him. He could almost hear Clara's voice, the way it danced softly with the notes of his violin, urging him to find his path. It felt like a call to action, a summons to uncover the truth. As he stepped out onto the street corner where he had played countless times, the world felt different. The bustling city of Chicago, with its cacophony of sounds, seemed to fade into the background. He held his violin tightly, feeling its familiar weight against his chest. It was a part of him, just like the music that flowed through his veins. He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs, and began to play. The first notes were tentative, a whisper of uncertainty, but as he continued, his confidence surged. The melody wrapped around him like a warm embrace, carrying the echoes of his grandmother's love and encouragement. Each bow stroke felt like a conversation with Clara, a way to bridge the gap that had formed between them. "Ethan!" a voice called out, breaking through his reverie. He looked up to see Jake, the bully who had tormented him before, approaching with a group of his friends. Ethan's heart raced, but he refused to let fear take hold. Clara's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of the strength he possessed. "Look who's playing again," Jake sneered, crossing his arms with a smirk. "I thought you'd given up after your grandma kicked the bucket." Ethan's grip on the violin tightened, but he didn't falter. "She didn't kick the bucket. She believed in me, and that's something you wouldn't understand." Jake's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of confusion mingling with disdain. "What are you talking about? She was just some old lady. You think that makes you special." "It does," Ethan asserted, his voice steady. Because I know the truth now. I know who I am and where I come from. I'm not afraid of you anymore." With that declaration, Ethan played louder, pouring every ounce of emotion into the music. The notes soared, filling the air with a rich tapestry of sound that seemed to challenge the very essence of the city. Passers-by slowed, intrigued by the intensity of his performance. It was as if the violin had become an extension of him, each note a declaration of his newfound identity. Jake and his friends exchanged glances, their bravado faltering in the face of Ethan's passion. For the first time, Ethan felt the power of his music wash over him, drowning out the taunts and doubts that had plagued him for so long. He was not just a boy playing on a street corner. He was a musician, a grandson, and a bearer of a legacy that demanded to be heard. As he finished the piece, the last note hanging in the air like a whisper of hope, Ethan looked up. Jake and his friends had retreated, their laughter replaced by a stunned silence. The crowd that had gathered clapped, some even cheering, and Ethan felt a swell of pride rise within him. He had played not just for himself, but for Clara, for the family he had yet to discover. Ethan took a moment to breathe, allowing the applause to wash over him. He realized that this was just the beginning of his journey. The letter had opened a door he had never known existed, and with it came the promise of understanding and reconnection. He would find his mother, learn about the family feud, and embrace the music that was his birthright. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the city, Ethan stood tall, violin in hand. He felt a spark of determination ignite within him, a fire that would guide him through the darkness ahead. The echoes of his family's past would no longer haunt him. Instead, they would fuel his dreams. With renewed purpose, Ethan stepped away from the corner, ready to face whatever came next. His journey was only beginning, and he would not back down. He was ready to embrace his newfound identity and the music that would lead him home.